You're listening to Sarah Talk. It's political.
You could run a fucking pet rock against Donald Trump, and I would vote for the pet rock.
Yeah.
That's where we're at right
Yeah.
Critical.
One of the things that drives me nuts as an atheist is that my polling location is at a church. And I don't necessarily have a problem. I'm not going to like burst into flames walking into a church.
Now, after being on this show and having heard your viewpoints on some things, my advice to you is don't test this. I won't burst into flames.
And positively LGBT positive.
In many states, you can still be evicted from housing simply for being gay or transgender. Stand and fight with us.
Oh, and occasionally completely absurd.
I don't know if you've ever seen a lightning bug, but he flies around with a flame of light coming out of his behind. The lightning bug got a flame coming out of his butt.
It's a beautiful night tonight. All the sodomites are out.
And now, from Orlando, Florida, your host, Sarah Austin.
Hey everybody, welcome to Sarah Talk. I'm your host, Sarah Austin. The lovely Becca in the studio with me.
Hey, hey.
Tonight we're joined by a special in-studio guest. We have Joseph Richardson. Joseph is involved with the original Motto Project. We talked to them back on episode 112. And he's also involved with the Central Florida Free Thought community, which is hard to say all in one shot. And locally and then nationally with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Joseph, thanks for coming all the way down here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's kind of a haul.
It really is.
When we say Orlando, we mean
Like
kind of
somewhere
near Orlando.
Like the tourist people that say that Busch Gardens is near Orlando or that Legoland is near Orlando.
Yeah,
kind of the
sure.
same thing.
The realtors that tell you,
Yeah.
every home that's anywhere near
It's 15
Florida
minutes from
is-
Disney, but that's like they forget to tell you that Disney has like 60 miles worth of property that isn't necessarily Disney.
Right, it takes half an hour to drive from the east side of Disney to the west side of Disney. Yeah,
On a good day.
on a good day. Okay, hey, so we've got a lot of fun things to talk about tonight. I pulled up some news stories, things that are going on, and we'll kind of dive into those in a little bit. But I thought we would take just a minute here at the top to get to know you. Talk a little bit about your. Where do you want to start?
The beginning is a good place.
Well, I think you're. So let's start in the middle, and then we can go back to the beginning.
Sure, my idea is.
I really want to hear about your sort of shocking baptism into secular activism.
Well,
This is an interesting story.
you mean with respect to the city of Winter Garden?
Yes, I am talking
Okay.
about that.
Yeah, well, I had started getting involved with the Central Florida Free Thought community. This is about 5 years ago now. And one of the things that David Williamson had suggested to me at the time was to start working with the invocations, because this was just before Greece versus Galloway came out from the Supreme Court, and we didn't quite know what was going to happen there. And so I started attending city commission meetings, particularly those in my hometown of Winter Garden. And
It's all right. I haven't had that much to drink yet. Dan, this is your time to shine.
You want a real paper towel?
Yeah, that'd be great. Sorry.
yeah, so I was going to some of these city commission meetings at Winter Garden, and I was taking video of the invocations just to have a record of it. And I had decided at the time that I knew that they were going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and so this was a totally separate thing from the invocation process. And I just decided that I didn't feel comfortable with it at all. I had never really felt comfortable with it, but it hadn't been an issue for me for, since I left high school, 35, 40 years ago. And I decided that I just didn't feel comfortable standing for the pledge, so I wasn't going to do it. So I was really nervous about it in the beginning, but I went through a couple of meetings like this and nobody said anything to me. I just sat through the invocation, recorded it on my phone, and sat through the pledge, and it was all good. And so I started to get comfortable with it, and went there to one meeting, and I was sitting in front, right in the front row, and getting ready to record the invocation. Everybody stands up, and the mayor calls me out and says, we're waiting for everybody to stand up. And I said, oh, you're talking to me? and that started a whole hullabaloo.
Yeah.
And of course, the city had to back down on that, and because they can't make you stand for the invocation or for the pledge.
Right, but not before like escorting you out.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, the mayor said either you have to stand or you have to leave, and
Ridiculous.
called the chief of police up to escort me out of the room.
Oh my God.
Unreal.
So
Wow.
yeah, and so that was it. So yeah, if you've seen those things, those memes about what is it, Trump referring to Trump, is like I was you made me an activist or something. I was whatever, but you made me an activist.
Right.
I can pin that on the mayor of Winter Garden.
Yeah.
Say,
Yes.
yeah,
Holy cow.
I was working on invocations or whatever, but you made me an activist.
I had an interesting conversation with someone. I am hesitant to talk about things that I do at work, but I had a conversation with a coworker the other night, who tends to find himself on the other side of the aisle from me on a lot of things. We do agree on a great many things, the God question being one of them, but politically we're kind of on opposite sides of the fence. And we had he is very much one of these respect our flag, respect our nation, respect our troops kind of guys, and I am kind of not. And so we had I would think I would describe it as a very respectful conversation about like, okay, why do you think that that's such a good thing? What does the ritual of all of us standing up and kneeling and facing west toward, no, wait a minute, that's something else. What is it about that ritual that you think is a positive thing? And why are you so attached to that ritual?
Yeah.
It was a really good conversation because I'm not.
One of the best comments that I think I saw that came out of that whole episode was one that was it was in response to the Orlando Sentinel article that appeared. And so they, and they got like 1,000 comments on this article. And, sorry, it wasn't in response to it, but it was part of the article. And it was a quote from, I can't remember whether the guy was military or ex-military, but, one of those. And he said, I'm offended by him not standing up for the pledge, but I'm also offended by the mayor kicking him out.
Yep.
And I think that's a perfectly reasonable position to take.
Yep. You talk to a lot of these military guys and look at all this stuff with the NFL, right? And they'll be the first ones to tell you, like, no, look, I put my life on the line so that guy could do that.
Exactly.
Like, I may not agree with it, but that's kind of why I went into the service. Like,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I did that for. Okay. So that got you into a more activist position. Let's back up a minute and talk about kind of your personal journey from faith. How did you come out of religion?
Yeah, I was raised in a Christian family. I actually grew up in Calvary Assembly of God, which, if you know that church, it's right downtown Winter Park, right off of I-4. And
I know people that go to that church.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when I left and went to college up in New York, I started going to an Episcopal church, and I had been going to an Episcopal church ever since at that point. But it was about 6 years ago now that I had to start thinking about some other issues, and it was really just a 4 or 5, maybe 6 month period of really trying to figure stuff out, which kind of led me to, it was kind of one doctrine after another kind of fell away. It started with hell and then moved on to other issues. But I read, it was just a matter of between studying the Bible and reading a bunch of other books and listening to podcasts and watching debates and, all the usual things. I got to the point where I just couldn't believe anymore.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the steps better, because I don't. Like most of my 20s, it was just a numb blur anyway for a lot of reasons. But like that was the time that I quit going to church, and I just kind of never went back, and it didn't, and I didn't think anything of it, and I didn't care, and it was there, and it was a thing that people did, but I didn't anymore, and it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
And then I came out as trans, and saw the entire world turning on its head to shove Jesus down my throat about who can pee where and all of this nonsense. And that's when I started going, okay, wait a minute, I need to pay a little bit more attention to this religion thing that I was just apathetic about for so long. And that kind of got me, I think, more into an activist position. And then I went from, because there's a part of me that I don't want to debate people, like I don't know that does any good. And unless it's like the professional debate forum where it's more for the audience than it is actually for the debate itself.
Right.
But I don't think that that's something that I would be interested in doing. So because I'm not deeply studied, and what I've come to realize recently is I don't think you need to be, right? Do the Anthony Magnabosco epistemological approach to why do you believe, right? We can argue all day long about was there a Jesus or not. And if there was, great, but that doesn't talk about a divinity. And then we can talk about this Bible verse contradicts this Bible verse. And none of it matters if the method by which you're getting to assume that is a truth is a bad method.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I've evolved to now. Like I don't need to study it anymore. I don't need to be able to argue with with a pastor or an apologist. I just don't need to anymore, because it's the method, not the details.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that my focus is certainly more on things like invocations, more improvements for our society, equality, and all that sort of thing, rather than trying to convince people of one position or another. It's they can do what they want.
Yep. So when you decided you were going to live out loud atheist, how did the family take that?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to clarify, I mean, because that whole thing turned into a big news issue, it wasn't that I decided I was going to come out. You didn't have a choice, right? But it was pretty much forced upon me. But it was not the kind of situation that anybody wants to be in. You want to be able to control that kind of outing, and it was uncontrolled for me. And so I had to spend the next couple of weeks going around talking to friends and relatives and trying to explain the whole situation. And it was, I had relatives in where are they? Illinois, Missouri.
Oh, I'm from Illinois. Yeah, interesting.
Who found out because of the news.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that.
Yeah. So that was really odd. And so anyway, it was okay. But a little stressful there for a couple of weeks, trying to damage control,
right,
sort of thing.
Yeah, I've had some family when there was a period of time when, I guess you would call that my angry atheist phase, when the sort of memes that I post on the Sarah Talk page that are real cheeky and like poke fun at religion. I used to post that stuff on my personal profile, and I don't do that anymore. But I had some old friends and some family kind of corner me and say, like, what are you doing this for? Like, what are the whole, are you mad at God? Like all of those things, but like, why don't you just let people have their religion and you have not? And I had to argue back against that and say, well, unfortunately, a lot of you are using your religions to X, Y, and Z. Do you think that this should be illegal? Do you think that this should be banned? Do you think that these people are icky? Right, then you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm going to speak out against it. Okay, so from that meeting, you've been involved in a lot of things since then.
Yes.
Particularly on the local level with invocations and stuff.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit. Some of those policy changes that you've seen take place to try to like circumnavigate we want to be inclusive, but not really.
Yeah. And Winter Garden seems to be one of those, but we've had pretty good success, I think, in Central Florida area, convincing the municipalities that they need to either treat everyone equally or just need to get rid of invocations. I mean, it's been a variety of reactions from the various cities, and some of them actually. I mean, we still run the gambit on this. We have cities that still do commissioner-led invocations, which is going to be interesting now that just in this past week, the Supreme Court declined to hear the case of Rowan, North Carolina, where commissioners were doing almost exclusively Christian invocations. And the Supreme Court has let stand the ruling that says, no, they can't do that. So we'll have to see how that goes with other municipalities around the country now. And so we go from that all the way down to municipalities that have gotten rid of invocations completely,
which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, just said let's not even deal with it. We can treat everybody equally by not having it or by having a moment of silence.
Yep.
And that works just as well. And people can do what they want with respect to that.
Yeah.
So we had Longwood, I think, recently, just in the last couple of months, got rid of their invocations. So for that reason.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
It seems like such an outdated practice.
Right.
Yeah. Dan says, I guarantee if Mike Pence was willing to appear on Sarah Talk, there would be an amazing debate.
I guarantee that Mike Pence would never agree to appear.
I would just
on
play.
Sarah Talk.
I would just play the audio from a gay sex porn film. Maybe, I don't know, because I know that would make him feel real icky.
Why not? Why just the audio? We have the capability to just play the gay.
That's
porn.
true. We could, but yeah, you're right. Okay, so what I was working on there while I was trying to fiddle on my phone, talk about the petition that you've got running.
Right. So ever since that time okay, so at the time that I got kicked out for not standing for the pledge, the invocations in Winter Garden were handled by one of the commissioners, just like I was talking about, and I had already talked to them about this, and there was some movement there already to change that. And me getting kicked out because of the pledge just kind of accelerated that process. Not in the best way, but it did. So what happened was that the very next meeting, they scheduled a special meeting actually a week later, and said they made it clear that people don't have to stand for the pledge, and they got rid of the invocations. Okay. So they went to a moment of silence, and we were all good with that. It was not what I was asking for. I was asking simply to do an invocation. That was the whole thing that I started with. And but
rather than let you do one, they would just rather let's not do that anymore.
Well, that's what they said for a while anyway. And then 6 months later, so that was like in the end of August, beginning of September. Yeah, actually, that special meeting happened to occur on September 11th.
Oh my!
Oh wow!
No, September 2nd.
Okay.
It was a week, or September 4th, so a week before. And then the regularly scheduled meeting was on September 11th. That's why they wanted to avoid the controversy on September 11th. That's what it was. So anyway, 6 months later, they have elections for two of the commissioners. So this is in March. And the meeting after they swore in the commissioners, they introduced an ordinance to bring back invocation. Not an ordinance, a resolution, sorry. So they bring back invocations with these certain rules, and you have to be on a list that the city maintains, and the city can, go and search for people to be on the list or whatever it is. And the commissioners take turns choosing from the list who gets to do the invocation. So that's how it's been since then, okay? Except for about 9 months after that, they introduced another rule change, which said, in order to be on the list, you have to be a representative of a 501c3.
Oh my God.
So they interpret this now as, or at least what I've gotten from them is that you either have to be a resident representing a 501c3, or you have to be someone representing a 501c3 that has a presence in Winter Garden. Okay, so they're trying to focus it on Winter Garden.
Sure.
And fortunately, at the time, the Central Florida Free Thought community had just gotten their 501c3 status.
Nice.
So
Nice try, but
so I got
Here
to
we
stay on.
are.
I got to stay on the list,
Nice.
but we had some other people who did get kicked off the list because they weren't representing 501c3s, and that's kind of where it stands, you know. So they've gotten a variety of people on the list. They've had almost exclusively Christian invocations since then. Something like 96% of
Wow.
the invocations have been Protestant Christian invocations. I think they've had one Catholic, one Jewish, and I think that may be it. You know, since in the last three and a half years.
Thanks.
So
not entirely surprised.
No.
yeah. So so I've told a long story now and forgotten what your original question was.
So the petition.
Oh, the petition.
I have created we have a link that we use from time to
Right.
time that we redirect at different things that we want people to go check out.
Yeah.
It's saratalk.com/act, ACT.
Uh-huh.
So I've pointed that towards the change.org petition if people want to go check it out.
Right. So I've done a variety of things in the last 3 years to kind of keep this issue in front of the commission, and the most recent thing is this petition that I've set up. And at the direct, you can go through Saratalk redirect, but it's also found at tinyurl.com/WG for Winter Garden petition. tinyurl.com/WG petition. So
cool. Dan says Phoenix City Council eliminated the invocation after a Satanist priest brought a suit in order to perform an invocation. We see the Satanists pop up from time to time.
I like them.
stir
They're
up-
cool.
Yeah,
just to stir up shit.
Yeah.
So to clarify what the petition is actually asking for, it does line out the problems, a couple of the problems that are going on with the current situation. And what we're asking for is one of three things. First is to either change the rules so that it's fair to everybody. Basically, either take the choice away from the commissioners and just put it on a rotating basis. Everybody gets a chance, right?
Yep.
Who's on the list.
Yep.
Second thing would be to go to a moment of silence. Again, very fair option. Third thing would be just to start the meeting. Don't do anything.
Yep.
Right.
So all of those are more fair, less discriminatory than the position they have now. So that's what the petition's asking.
Cool. I'm gonna queue up. I think I got the wrong one here. I'm gonna queue up a couple of videos that you sent over to us.
Okay.
From these invocations, but while I'm doing that, outside of the issues in Winter Garden specifically, and maybe some of that extended family finding out the hard way. Have you experienced any kind of discrimination against yourself? Even maybe changes in behavior of people that you knew prior, that as you were becoming more of an activist, kind of maybe looked at you differently?
Yeah, it hasn't been too bad, really. There's been a couple of people that I could point to and say that they've either drifted away. There's only one couple that I could say was explicit about their desire not to hang out with me anymore. So it hasn't been too bad. And I'll say this too, when the whole thing went down with getting kicked out for the pledge, and even since then, I have not received a single piece of hate mail or hate email or anything like that. I mean, just the comments you get online for various things.
Yeah.
Right.
That's such a friendly place to be, too.
I don't think those qualify.
Yeah. So, I've had disagreements with people in person, but it usually we can walk away friends. But it hasn't been too bad.
That's
So,
good.
A lot of the fears that I had have turned out to be unfounded. So
I think that's true of when you get offline, you get out in the real world.
Yeah.
People will say shit online that they would never say to anybody in person, and when you meet them out in the real world, they're totally different. The anonymity of the internet being what it is.
yeah, and I get that for the most part. I get that on Saturday mornings, I've been going out to the farmers market in Winter Garden to collect signatures for the petition. And, you know, I've had a lot of discussions now with people over the last few months, and I've had some really good ones, and I've had some okay ones. But one of the best ones was a guy that he disagreed with me, but, you know, we stood there and we talked about it. And in the end, he said, you know, I disagree with you, but I really respect what you're doing, and you're standing up for what you believe in. And I admire what you're doing, even though I disagree with it. Yeah. And, you know, we shook hands and walked away. And
yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. I think when you get out of the, you know, the bullet point world of, oh, well, liberals are trying to do this, and the atheists are trying to do that, and the conservatives are doing that, and they're taking this away, and once you like actually sit down and have a conversation with somebody and go, actually, this is what I would really like. Like,
right.
I don't necessarily want like Christianity to be banned or anything. Like,
right.
I'm not trying to get your religion outlawed.
Right.
I just want a seat at the table.
Right.
And if the best thoughts prevail turns into your religion kind of suffering for that, then I'm sorry, but like, don't we want to know true things? But at the end of the day, we just want an equal voice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think there's a quote somewhere about, you know, something like when you point out that it's Christian privilege that is being attacked, not Christian equality, it still feels like, you know, if you're on the Christian side of that, it feels like you're being attacked.
Sure.
So and if I can follow up on this, you know, there is a counter petition to mine, which I think totally misses the point. I think it's sort of like what you were saying a minute ago, because the counter petition is saying we don't want to get rid of Christian invocations, and they also threw in the Light Up Winter Garden, which is a whole other issue. But neither one of those things is what I'm asking for.
Right.
You know, my petition is simply make the rules fair,
yeah,
or go to a moment of silence. And so, anyway.
Right. Either we all get to speak or nobody gets to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this first one, oh wait, before I do that, Victoria says, I'd love to give a Wiccan invocation. Harm none, do what you will, blessed be. Now, can we get down to actually fucking helping people?
I gotta say,
I love it.
Victoria, this is great. I have 2 friends that are Wiccan, and this is kick-ass.
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, that's totally what I would expect.
Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment. If you actually said those literal words, you would probably
be asked to leave too.
Yeah, you would not be given another opportunity. Yeah.
Just drop that one word and you'll be okay. You can think it real hard though.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one of these that I want to play, and I'll link to these in the show notes. This is from January 18th in Eustis at the City Commission meeting. So this was the 3rd secular invocation at the Eustis City Council. I'll play through this. If you want to stop and interject at any point, let me know. But pay particular attention to the end.
I'll just give you one little bit of introduction to this. Is even though I haven't done an invocation in Winter Garden, I have done invocations in other cities on behalf of the Central Florida Free Thought community, and this is one of them. I'll just say that.
Yes.
Actually, my name is Joseph Richardson. Oh, you said that. Yes. But I am from the Central Florida Free Thought community. And thank you again for having me back. Before I begin my invocation tonight, I'd like to take just a moment to remember the Roque family and the loss of their 6-year-old son, Riker. This tragic accident is something that no family should have to go through, and I'm sure this entire chamber grieves with them. Please join me in a few moments of quiet reflection or silent prayer as you wish.
Okay, that's pretty inclusive there.
I hope so.
Offering the choice of however you choose to honor this family.
Yeah, and this was just a little child who I forget exactly what the accident was, but it was big news at the time because I think it was a preventable death. And the parents just didn't realize what was going on, something like that. Right. But anyway.
The name sounded familiar, so I'm sure we heard about it.
Crap, I clicked the button.
Moments of quiet reflection. If anyone would like to help the Roque family in a tangible way, please consider contributing to their GoFundMe to help defray their medical bills. Mayor and Commissioners, this past Tuesday was the 232nd anniversary of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, a day we've come to know as Religious Freedom Day. Penned by Thomas Jefferson, the Virginia Statute was one of his 3 proudest accomplishments. We know this because of his specific instructions to include it on his gravestone, along with the author of the Declaration of American Independence and the father of the University of Virginia. This statute was the prelude to the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, guaranteeing everyone the freedom to believe in the religion of their choice or to reject them all. Barely 2 pages long, the statute is worth reading from time to time to remind us of the importance of this freedom and the reasoning behind it. This is the enacting clause just as he wrote it. Quote, "Be it enacted by the General Assembly that no man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced, restrained, molested, or burthened in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinions in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities." End quote. This is the crux of the natural right that Jefferson asserts, that each of us is free to believe or not, that none are required to support the religious opinions of others, and that all are guaranteed full participation in civil matters regardless of religion or lack thereof. Jefferson's radically inclusive statute has stood as a lighthouse for 232 years, directing us towards a successful collective life. Regardless of our individual beliefs, let us now welcome each other to participate in these communal efforts, respect each other as we work out solutions, and wish each other the best as we go our separate ways. Thank you for your time and attention.
Okay.
God bless you, Mr. Richardson.
Oh, God.
Oh, gotta get that dig. Just dig right in there at the end.
Yeah, Sabatini.
Man.
The last time that, I should say the first time, you noticed at the beginning I said thanks for welcoming me back, because I actually gave an invocation in Eustis the year before as well. And at that time, not only did Sabatini say something about it, but he actually got the mayor to allow him to give another invocation after mine. So he gave a Christian prayer after mine. They had some discussion at following meetings and decided, no, we're only ever going to do one invocation
Good
from
idea.
now on. Yeah.
Wow.
So
How
that-
insulting.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So he threw that in this time to
Well,
make
yeah.
sure.
Because they wouldn't let him talk anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the next one is at Sanford, and this was just Monday?
Yeah. It's Monday.
It was just past Monday. And I like these because, like, I'll have people, I've gotten into this conversation with friends before, and they'll say, well, I don't get that. What even is a secular invocation? Oh, it could be a lot of things. And so I think this is a good kind of, that last one was a very kind of educational, historical, founding fathery. Like, this is, let's really talk about, the freedom of religion and from, where I think this one was a little more, I don't know what words I want to use, but more like, let's think about the role that we play and why we're here today to do the things that we do. And as we go through this meeting, let's consider those things and make good choices.
In particularly from a humanistic perspective.
Right.
And let me just add real quick that if anybody wants to see, these are just a couple that I've done, but if you go to the Central Florida Free Thought webpage, we have an invocation page that lists more than 60 invocations now that we've done in the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years, as part of this effort that we've put forth, trying to make sure that we get on the radar. So there's lots more to choose from. Even Monday night, there was one other besides mine. There was one from Anna Lonergan that she did in Castleberry, which was really good. So anyway.
Okay, here we go.
Good afternoon to all of you, and we will begin our meeting. We will first have a legislative prayer, after which we will have pledge allegiance.
Is this the one where they called you pastor?
Yes, in just a moment. Yeah.
I thought that was great.
With Reverend Pastor Joseph Richardson of the Central Florida Free Thought Community come forward.
That's it for the rest of the night.
Sounds like a
Reverend
Yes, not actually
Pastor
a pastor, but thank you.
Joseph Richardson.
Is
yeah,
that a
I'm here
contradiction?
representing the
To be both?
To be a pastor, reverend, and a member of the Free Thought Society, or a representative of the... I
Well,
think
I
it's-
just
I think
clarified
that's
that
an
I wasn't.
oxymoron.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here representing the Central Florida Free Thought community. So thank you for this opportunity to provide the invocation on behalf of the Central Florida Free Thought community. Last Thursday was World Humanist Day, and the American Humanist Association offers this description of humanism. It affirms our ability and responsibility to lead meaningful, ethical lives capable of adding to the greater good of humanity. As it applies to the city of Sanford, the work you do tonight dovetails with this philosophy, specifically to add to the greater good of Sanford. I have no doubt that this is the reason each of you is here, to help improve the lives of the citizens. Indeed, it is the reason for many of the activities that occur in Sanford and the surrounding area. This meeting and your deliberations will improve the community of Sanford. Everything you do in your job as commissioner moves the city toward this goal. And so, even with all the administrative necessities that come with your job, I encourage you to keep that goal of the greater good in mind, to put aside personal preferences, to evaluate real data, to consider deeply the effects your decisions will have, to judge issues rationally, to debate respectfully, and to decide fairly. Thank you for your service.
Yeah. So there you go. There's a couple of different
You
examples.
have a very pastory way of speaking.
Oh.
Oh, you're just offended he's going to walk out now.
No, I'm kidding. No. I think you kind of almost have to when you're doing something like this, though, because if you just come in and like...
It's a public speaking thing, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, but,
more of
but
a...
yeah. I think they don't take you as seriously if you just come in and say something without the power of, you know what I mean?
I think the...
I think so.
At the beginning of this one, if I remember right, that it was this one, it turned the ritual up on its head a little bit, because I saw people kind of looking at each other like, do we stand or power? Hey, what do we do?
They didn't know.
Right.
So that was good. That was fun.
I think usually the mayor asks everyone to stand, and at this point, they often don't know what to do with a secular invocation. And I think you may have seen, actually, David Williamson was in the background, and he made a point of standing, and I think kind of forcing everybody to stand, even though the mayor didn't say anything. And it makes sense. I mean, if again, it's a matter of equal treatment. I mean, I don't care. For myself, I would just probably sit through everything if it were up to me. Sure. But I understand the equal treatment part. If they're going to ask people to stand for somebody's Christian prayer, they should ask people to stand for anybody's statement. Whatever the prayer or statement is.
So there's a couple of examples for folks who may have never heard a secular invocation before.
Yeah.
What sort of things? I mean, I think we may have covered it, but what sort of things do you, when you sit down to to write, this is what I'd like to say at this particular venue, what sort of things do you think through?
One of the things that I think about is maybe what the time of year is. So, for instance, each of those had a calendar date in them. The first one was about the anniversary of the Statute for Religious Freedom. Second one was the World Humanist Day. So, to focus around current events, to come up with something that dovetails with that is often helpful. But aside from that, we're just asking the commissioners to remember what their job is, to remember the importance of their job, and so I come up with different ways to say that.
Yeah, that's good. You know what? I did. It's up here somewhere. I did an invocation at Transgender Day of Remembrance last year, and I think it's still up on our website if you go. Yeah,
that was great, by the way.
It's up there somewhere.
The whole way that came about was awesome.
Yeah. If it's not readily available right now, I'll make sure to throw the link back in. Yeah, that was interesting because so the one of the people organizing the event was on the Facebook group. Just I think we got everything finished, the venue, we got all of these things ready. The only thing we really don't have is a pastor or a preacher or a faith leader to do she said opening invocation or something like that.
Yeah.
Opening, closing prayer. I think it said prayer.
I thought she did say invocation.
She might have. And so I let it sit for a couple minutes and then like watching to see what the responses might be, right? Because I'm expecting someone to say, oh, my pastor at the church is just whatever. And so I kind of raised my hand and said, hey, never done it before. And I don't have any credentials, but I'm happy to do a secular invocation if that would be something that you're interested in. And I can make it more representative of, of all the community. Becca's still nursing
I'm trying to get my leg
knee injury
moved because it's hurting.
So that was totally just came about on the fly. It was really interesting.
That's neat.
And I'd love to do. I want to be a humanist chaplain. Yeah, sign me up for all the things. I want to do all the things.
Cool. For the last 3 years, First Baptist Orlando has hosted a religious freedom summit, and this past year they're getting more inclusive every year. It's really good. And this past year, Jocelyn Williamson from our group, the Central Florida Free Thought, she got to give the invocation at the summit this year, and that was really good too.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, I think that's great. I wasn't paying attention. Oh, let's talk about church bands.
Church band.
Playing in the church band.
Oh gosh.
So Joseph.
I never got to play in a church band.
Joseph comes in and says, looks at the rack full of guitars here that off camera that you can't see. Who plays guitar? And I used to. I played in. It was a Church of God back in Decatur, Illinois, and this is the church that I went to for a girl, and ended up like in a one-on-one Bible study with one of the pastors. And that's when I really started kind of going, oh, this is so bullshit. This is so stupid. Why am I doing this? And because he had me like, okay, you're going to read this section, and I want you to write down all of the promises and the truths. Killing me. But anyway, so I also I played in their band, and but like doing the Bible study was it kind of went with that, because they didn't want anyone on the stage, you see, who might not be firm in their conviction and their faith. They didn't want anybody up there who might, give off the wrong impression about. So stupid.
So you couldn't play rock and roll in the Jesus band. You had to...
No, we played the normal like contemporary faith stuff.
Oh,
yeah, or praise and worship songs, sure, yeah. But yeah,
I'm just trying to imagine.
But had I, shown any wavering at all,
out you go.
You go sit back over there now.
Yeah, and my experience was a little bit different. I mean, after I got kicked out again for the pledge, it was no longer a secret to be kept. I did have a conversation with both the priest at the Episcopal Church, where I still go, by the way. We haven't even gotten to that, but
yeah.
Wow,
that's
wait
next,
a minute.
Actually,
we're gonna need a break and a bigger bottle of rum.
I had a conversation with the priest and with the music minister, and they were both okay with me continuing to play there. I thought I was pretty direct with them, but apparently they got the idea that I was still searching in some fashion, and so they were okay with letting me continue to play. I played. I actually didn't play guitar at the time for the band. Because we had guitar players, but I played bass or drums. I played hammer dulcimer once or twice for them.
Wow.
But anyway, so that went on for almost a year, I think it was, until things oh, I'm getting the timeline messed up. I actually told them earlier on, and it was when I got kicked out for the not standing for the pledge, that the priest came back to me and said, "No, we can't do this anymore."
Huh.
And his reasoning seems to be, what I understood was that he thought that I was now actively advocating for atheism at that point, and so he couldn't have that anymore. And of course, that wasn't my point. I mean, I was advocating for equality at that point,
Sure.
And still am. But it's okay. It's his choice. He doesn't have to have me play. So anyway, so I got kicked out. Yeah.
But you still go.
I do still go. My wife is still Christian, and I go to support her, and I still have friends there.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
that's one of the things that we talk about in atheist circles a lot is, when people leave faith, they often lose family and friends and community and everything that they've, every minute away from work, and sometimes even at work, is devoted to this God belief, that this church, this organization, these people. And then when they come out and go, I'm not really sure that I believe any of this shit anymore, everybody turns on them. And I think that's a very common story. And one of the things that I want to be a part of is creating a landing pad for people who are coming out, who lose all of that, somewhere to go, so that we're still having community. And I think the Central Florida Free Thought community is doing a great job with that. With they're now traveling around to different cities and having little meetups, and I think that's awesome. Because one of the things that I've always been frustrated about is, particularly in rural areas, and this is something that's been a challenge for me as a queer person too, is finding community out here in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
Going to Orlando is not a thing for me anymore. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to go to Tampa. I'm not going to go to Orlando. It's not convenient. It's not fun. I have major anxiety with groups of people and downtowns. And so, I found Lakeland kind of seems to be like maybe my limit at this point as far as like city size goes. Like, that wasn't so bad to go to their Pride event. But I love the idea that there's the traveling kind of meetup group. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's actually people that are in those areas. I mean, it's not, we don't have like somebody who's going around to do all those free thought cafes, but we're starting to get people in those areas to sponsor those, to host those
Cool.
meetups. And, so that's really good. And of course, we also have the once a month, we have an educational meeting, which is sort of a centralized thing in Winter Park. And we're working on a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah. So where we started there was that your wife still believes and that you still go to church.
Yeah.
And I think there's some good to that. I think that's good. That you didn't lose your friends and your family and your your whole community by discarding that belief. I think that's great. That needs to happen more often, really.
Yeah, and I am still in relationship with most of those people. I've just added new relationships.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a break.
Okay.
Let's take a break, and then we come back. We have some conversations about some stuff that's in the news. I want to talk. I want to talk about the state of the nation, as it were.
Oh my God! Do we have to do that tonight? Can we just sleep on that one and hope it was a bad dream, and maybe it'll change before next week?
You can wish all you'd like, but I don't know how much good that's going to do you.
I knew you were going to say
that. Why don't you stare at the sky and mumble some words and see how that works?
I don't do that.
Okay, good. All right, we'll be back right after this. You're listening to Sarah Talk.
Tired of living in a culture of lies, fake news, and alternative facts? The Pro-Truth Pledge reverses the tide of lies by calling on politicians and everyone else to commit to truth-oriented behaviors. The pledge asks signees to commit to 12 behaviors that research in behavioral science shows lead to truthfulness. Take the pledge, demand that your elected representatives do so, and encourage your friends to take it at protruthpledge.org.
In today's health-conscious society, you have many beverage choices. But do you know what's in all of them? So much sugar, sodium, and things you can't even pronounce. Dihydrogen monoxide. What's that? Sometimes you wish you just had a simple, more elegant solution for your beverage needs. Introducing H2O, the first ever chemical-free thirst quencher. H2O is simple, simply composed of 3 portions of 2 elements, hydrogen and oxygen. H2O means chemical-free, unlike water, which is filled with all sorts of shit. When we tested H2O, we found traces of no other elements. So pure, the bottle may as well be fucking empty, with all the same nutritional content as a breath of cool mountain air. First widely featured on Goop.com, actress Gwyneth Paltrow revealed that she exclusively uses H2O for her vaginal steaming process. After all, why use water when you can steam it with H2O? So now we invite you to run out to your local garden hose and drink that shit. Remember, it's not water, it's H2O.
H2O bottled by Flint Bottling Company in Flint, Michigan. Product not actually endorsed by Goop or Gwyneth Paltrow. Please do not use H2O for vaginal steaming, or better yet, please do not steam your vagina. H2O is actually just water. Water is a set of molecular compounds. It's a chemical. Everything is a chemical.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
Want to join the conversation or tell Sarah she's wrong? Email producer@sarahtalk.com or call 224-40-SARAH. That's 224-407-2724. Now, more Sarah Talk.
Welcome back to Sarah Talk. What's the matter?
My water is almost gone. I'm going to have to switch
I
to
should have.
rum.
I should have run out and refilled everybody while we were on our break.
Oh, wow.
Welcome back to Sarah Talk. I'm Sarah Austin. In the studio with me, my lovely wife, Becca,
Hello.
and our special guest, Joseph Richardson. Before we go into the break, hang on, I got to scroll back up. Morgan said something about checking out. You need to explore Unitarian Universalist. That's where, when I go to church, it's a beautiful place of acceptance. We talked to some people from UU, a local UU congregation in Lakeland, I think it was, at Polk Pride.
They were lovely.
They were great.
They were awesome.
One of the things we talked about, I mean, not in any great detail, but I will pull back the curtain for a moment and tell you a story about the creation of the T Network for Polk County in just a minute. But so we talked to them, and one of the things that comes to my mind when I think of that is, like, a lot of people, when they leave religion, they want, if it looks like a church, talks like a church, acts like a church, that it's church, and they don't want nothing to do with it, right? And so they go a complete opposite and pull way back from that. Now, we can get together for coffee on Sunday morning. Like, if there's a gap in your life and you need something to do on Sunday mornings because you used to go to church, and now you need something else to do, let's go have a breakfast somewhere. I'd be happy to do that. That would be lots of fun. If you're one of those folks that doesn't want to do anything to do with what looks like a church.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you do, great. They are great and inclusive. And so when we created the T Network for Polk County, the T Network was started in Orlando, is a kind of a professional networking social get together for trans people, and I was talking to our friend Jennifer who helped set that up and kind of runs it, and I was again belaboring the fact that there's nothing out in the middle of nowhere. Unless you go to downtown Orlando, there's just nothing. There's no organizations or support, and so I said I'd really like to create something. And she was like, well, let's do it. Oh, okay. And one of the conversations that we had very early on when we were trying to establish our first, like what our first get-together meeting was going to be. The UU congregation was one of the locations thrown out as a possibility because of their accepting stance. And I'm pleased to say that when I pushed back on that and said, yeah, okay, that sounds great, but a lot of us that aren't, yeah, okay, so they may accept non-believers, but there's a lot of non-believers who don't want anything to do with anything that has anything to do with the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe let's not do that. Maybe let's find something else. That I wasn't the only one. There, one of the other people in the committee, I guess we'll call ourselves. There's three of us.
The planning committee.
Yeah, said, yeah, I totally get that. I'm an atheist too, and I'm, I understand how that would turn people. The idea is we want to get people to come, right? And if there are atheist trans people out there and we want them to come, we need to make it as easy for them and as welcoming for them to come as possible.
And you never know what somebody has been through and what might trigger them, and what I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who've had really bad experiences and have said I'm never stepping foot in a church for any reason ever again. And so you kind of have to be, if you want to include everybody, you have to get to a place where it's a safe ground, or what is the common ground, somewhere where you're not, nobody has a home field advantage.
Right. Okay. So before we get into the news, we have been so off our normal schedule.
Yeah.
So we have a voicemail from one of our listeners, from John.
What?
Now,
we have a voicemail.
Now,
how old is the voicemail?
It's a couple weeks old. Now,
okay.
I mean, okay. So we were last week. We did Pride 48, and we had, when we do the Pride 48 streaming weekend, we have an hour. We have 58 minutes, and we got to get out on time, or they cut you off.
Room.
Like, that's just how. Next year, I think we need to ask for two hours.
I think we do.
Yeah.
We had an after party for our kids in the Facebook.
On the Facebook.
But it still wasn't.
No,
that wasn't planned.
No,
and we were just like, oh, okay, yeah, they're still online. Let's just keep going, and we just kind of BS'd about some stuff.
And the week before that, we were at Polk Pride in our booth for
nonstop
5 hours, and it was just one after another interview.
I thought we were gonna have like time to take a break, take a walk around, maybe like record some just you and me, like bantering.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen at all.
Like, it was crazy.
It was great.
It was awesome, but it was crazy.
So for those of you listening for the first time, rewind back to the last episode.
Yes, Morgan, you can leave voicemails.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to tell you how to do that in a minute.
All right.
So the last episode for Pride 48 was with Tim Reimel, who was a 25-year evangelical minister who entered himself into Love in Action, the foremost ex-gay conversion therapy, whatever program. He was heralded as one of their success stories. Lived life a little bit and realized, you know what? Turns out I'm gay after all, and that's not really something you can change. So that was an awesome interview that we had with him last week. And then the episode before that is all of our interviews from Polk Pride. So that should be enough to keep you busy. But those two episodes were some of our finer, so check them out. Okay, so this is John. And John was telling us, he was responding to a conversation that we had. I think it was about when you see someone else being a douche to somebody, like, making racial comments or whatever. Right. You're going to have to help me remember because it's been a while. But I think that's the conversation we were having. Like, when you're out and about, like if you see somebody being like that,
obnoxious,
what do you do?
Right.
Like, do you interject yourself? Do you
look around for cameras?
Right. Like, what's the name of that show?
What would you do?
What would you do? Right. What would you do? Okay, so here's John.
Hey, Sarah and Becca. It's John. I just wanted to comment on last week's episode when you were going through the what would you do type scenarios. And I actually ran across one of these while I was on vacation. And we were sitting out on the beach, and this group of people came over, and they started talking about how one of their sisters had married a Mexican man from one of the resorts that they visited, and they went back to the U.S., And they started talking about how this Mexican guy was just absolutely racist against white people. He just hated white people. And they just couldn't understand it because look at what all of the things in his life were given to him by white people. And look what white people had done for him. And I was like, I wanted to just like kick sand in someone's face, but it's one of those situations where you're like, what do I do about that? What investment do I have in that? And I'm on vacation. Like my point isn't to start a fight with somebody on vacation, and I am not going to change this guy's mind. So it really hit home with me when you were talking about that because I had just experienced it, and I'm like, it's so hard to figure out what you would do in that situation, or even if you should do something. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because that was something that you were talking about, and I really love the show, so keep it up. Bye.
I love John.
Aw, John, we
Thank
love
you, John.
you.
Yeah, that's definitely a hard thing to sort through. Like,
Okay. I think he did the right thing by not getting involved.
Sure.
Because he's on vacation,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not going to let somebody else's stupidity ruin my vacation. Now, if I'm on vacation and they're talking about somebody in my group, family, whatever, that's a little different. But I don't know. Like, I think it is. There's a fine line. I mean, I was raised to not see color. We didn't have, I grew up, I had friends that were from
and it's like
everywhere.
Offensive to say that now.
Right.
If you say,
like,
colorblind is a
really
four-letter word
it's,
now.
I don't understand it, but whatever. But like, I had friends that were from Trinidad. I had friends that were from Cuba. I had friends that were black. I had friends that were white, that were Hispanic. That South Florida is a melting pot for different types of cultures. So I think before I was a teenager, I had been introduced to every food under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
You had close family friends that were Jamaicans, and they would have us over, and you had to know how to eat their food because so I don't know. So it offends me when people are prejudiced over anybody from where they're from.
Yeah.
Can I speak to this?
Please, absolutely.
My very first thought was, I'll come back. I'll work backwards to my first thought. But there's absolutely a risk in intervening in a situation like that.
Oh yeah,
and I understand that, and no, I don't think anybody should put themselves in any additional risk because of that or anything that they're not willing to deal with it. On the other hand, my first thought was, and this is what has kind of guided me for the last 4 years or so, and that's a quote from Christopher Hitchens, who said, "Never be a spectator of unfairness or stupidity.
Mhm.
The grave will provide plenty of time for silence." And
I love Hitchens.
Wow.
And yeah,
may he rest in peace.
Yeah, and so I've been put in that situation kind of unintentionally, unconsciously, it wasn't my choice to be put out the way I was, but since I am out there, I feel more comfortable with that. Not everyone does. That's okay.
Sure.
But that's kind of what I think about that. If you have the opportunity to stand up to something like that, you should. I remember just a couple of weeks ago, I saw a video. I think it was from India, and there was a policeman who was he was clearly a different religious. He had a different religious belief than this man who was about to get lynched by everybody around him. And this policeman put his arms around the guy and got him out of there and walked him out, even though the policeman, I believe, was the same religious belief as the crowd. And I mean, he's a policeman, so he's not just a civilian. But anyway, it was neat to watch.
Yeah.
Facebook chat.
Yes.
Jeff says, people are being shamed on Facebook nowadays over such actions. Have cameras ready and share is one course of action that I support. So I think that's an interesting take on it. If you don't necessarily want to get involved in the moment, record it.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of that.
It's going on everywhere.
Jesus.
But I mean,
you got Permit Patty.
yeah.
You got what did they call
the
it?
barbecue,
Yeah,
whatever her name was. What did they call
It wasn't
it?
Becca, was it?
I hope
No.
not. Whoa, sir.
Barbecue Becky.
Barbecue.
Becky, I think.
Was it Barbecue Becky?
I think maybe.
Oh man, that sucks. That's
Sorry
why I don't.
about that.
Listen, I hate it when people call me Becky.
Yeah,
like there
it's
was
true.
like 4 people on the planet that are allowed to call me Becky, and they're only allowed to call me Becky because they've known me since I was Becky.
And even then, sometimes
It's really annoying.
yeah. Okay, so before we get into the news, if you want to call and leave us a voicemail, we would love for you to do that. That number is 224-40-SARAH, 224-407-2724.
Morgan will be waiting for your message.
Messages, probably. Yes, absolutely.
I want to get Jake to come in and just call that number in different voices.
Yes, and just, yeah, right. Okay, let's talk about the news. So, if you thought the death of democracy was bad enough, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy decided conveniently to put in his 4 weeks' notice. Need a moment of silence for Jesus Christ. Now, listen, this guy was not exactly, how do I want to put this? He's a conservative justice. Some of his votes lately have not been ones that I necessarily might have agreed with, but here's the thing. Now we're going to have Scalia Gorsuch III. And there's nothing we can do to stop it.
God, Ruth, please.
Yes, whoever ran that fundraiser for Betty White to keep her alive, we need to GoFundMe
Can we
to keep Ruth
also
Bader
get a
Ginsburg
GoFundMe
alive.
to please freaking find the actual Fountain of Youth, just for her, and anything else? Anybody got a hat trick that we can? I mean, otherwise we're gonna have to weekend at Bernie her.
Right. Right.
I think the most frustrating thing about this is that when Garrett
That guy?
when Obama
Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland,
There you
thank
go.
you.
Yep.
Thank you. Screwing up the names. Garland was proposed, and Obama still had like 9 months left, and they refused to vote on it.
Yeah.
Have hearings or anything. And now we're like at 4 or 5 months left until the midterms.
Yep.
And they're not going to hold off hearings, of course.
No, of course not.
And that to me is the most frustrating thing.
Yeah.
So it's pure hypocrisy.
Yep.
Excuse me.
And they have the votes they need.
Yeah.
Like there's very little that we can do to make this go away, to stop this.
That doesn't mean that you shouldn't write your senators
Oh,
and representatives
Lord. Yes.
and express your opinion. You should still do that.
That reminds me, we'll come back to this in a second. I got an email from my favorite Senator Marco Rubio.
How's Marky Mark doing?
Well, so I had sent an email to Mr. Rubio regarding the Equality Act, and he finally wrote back. And I'm going to read it to you. It's a bit wordy, but I'm going to read it to you. Now, keep in mind, these are form letters that, some lackey in the office is just copy pasting and hitting send, right? This is not like...
I'm going to look at mine while you're
Okay,
reading yours.
good.
I'll bet it's exactly the same.
exactly the same.
There you go.
Okay, so Marco says, "Thank you for taking the time to express your thoughts on the Equality Act. Understanding your views helps me better represent Florida in the United States Senate, and I appreciate the opportunity to respond. As you may know, on May 2nd, 2017, Senator Jeff Merkley introduced the Equality Act, where it was referred to the Senate Committee on the Judiciary. A companion bill was introduced in the House of the Representatives on the same day. The bill would amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit discrimination and segregation based on sexual orientation and gender identity in public places," which we should do. That was my word. It would also amend the Fair Housing Act, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, and jury selection standards to add sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes. In addition, the legislation would limit the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993 by prohibiting a legal challenge to these protections. Now, I'm going to read that sentence again because now this history, obviously, like I know what the act would do. That's why I wrote to voice my opinion on what you should do with it. But the legislation would limit the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, which is garbage anyway, by prohibiting a legal challenge to these protections. He goes on. The Equality Act specifically impacts establishments that provide goods and services, including public parks, schools, universities, shopping centers, banks, healthcare providers, and legal services. The legislation also calls on business owners with 15 or more employees and programs receiving federal dollars to prohibit discriminatory practices. The Department of Justice would be responsible for bringing forward a civil action if it receives a complaint from a person who has been denied equal use or access to public places, as well as intervene in equal protection actions in the federal court for sexual orientation and gender identity. While I am not a member of the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, I believe in protecting citizens from discriminatory practices and the importance of preserving religious freedom. It is an honor and a privilege to serve you as your United States Senator. I will keep your thoughts in mind as I consider these issues and continue working to ensure American remains a safe and prosperous nation.
American?
Yes. Okay.
See, I was falling asleep, but then
yes,
always with the
right. So the the get out of jail free card is but religious freedom.
Ugh.
Again, I say nobody's taking your religious freedom away.
Right.
Giving someone a freedom does not take it off of your plate and give it to them. That's not how that works.
Listen, okay, you gotta back up, Sarah. These are the same people that don't understand the difference between socialism and democratic socialism.
That's true. Yeah,
So,
nuance.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, I don't know why I read that, but no, I do know why I read that. Regardless of this, the garbage copy-paste responses,
that obviously weren't spell checked.
Call, write.
Yeah.
If you sign up for the action alerts at ffrf.org, they will send you action alerts right to your phone, and you can just click on that, and that will give you a real quick access to email, tweet, Facebook.
With how much technology we have in our hands, there's no excuse for people to not be doing this. It's so easy.
And here's what's on the line. All you have to do is watch any of these evangelical leaders, the televangelist crew, to know exactly what the agenda is. They want to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they want to roll back Obergefell. That's what they want to do. And if they have, right, so you had a swing vote with Kennedy, and now you put in another Scalia-Gorsuch, and now you're going to have 5-4 decisions to the right on everything.
Yep.
On everything. And those are the things that are at stake, and that's why you should get mad and start making phone calls.
And if we thought it was bad before with these protections, and as few as they were, the few things that we did get before, now they're going to start overturning things, and it's going to be worse than it was. And it wasn't great, people. You still had people that are, I mean, I cannot deal with this.
And if you think that...
Yes, Morgan, we can high-five their faces. I'm sorry. Yes. Let's high-five their faces. Multiple times.
Yes.
Until they have concussions.
If you think that stare decisis is going to save you, you're wrong. They're not going to look at either of these rulings as, judicial precedent that needs to be retained because they have an agenda. I think. That's what I think about that.
Is that the first bottle or the third bottle?
Of rum or Coke?
Coke.
There's one more still in there.
There's only one more?
I think so. I don't know.
Wow, babe.
Okay, the next story comes from the Right Wing Watch. Trump's cabinet has a weekly Bible study.
Of course they do.
Pastor Ralph Drollinger of Capital Ministries leads the weekly fundamentalist Bible studies for members of the House, Senate, and Trump's cabinet. he credits VP Mike Homophobe Huckabee with knowing who really loves the Lord and should be in the cabinet. Now, several of those cabinet members, including Jeff Sessions and Tom Price, asked him to start a cabinet Bible study. Now, can we just take a moment to consider the outrage? The Tiki Torch marches on Washington had Obama, who, by the way, clearly wasn't born here and was a Muslim, had weekly Quran study in the White House. Could you imagine the burning hair of the evangelical
riots
right
in the street?
Hell yes.
And
Oh my God. Yeah, you thought hanging Obama effigies on nooses was bad. Could you only imagine? But it's okay if the Christians do it.
Well, yeah, because they're worshiping white Jesus, who was born in America.
That's true.
His name is not...
You know what? We should just write a new gospel of Jesus Christ. And I can put my head in a hat and make up some words. And
okay.
We'll be cult leaders. Wouldn't that be great?
Oh, my God.
Drollinger...
I really don't want to be a cult leader. I'd rather do this and get paid nothing.
Okay. Drollinger's weekly written Bible studies, which are available online. You can go read them, and I'll put a link in the show notes. Instruct public officials that the government's job is to, quote, quell evil and punish sin, that, quote, as a lawmaker, it is incumbent on you to stand for the death penalty, end quote, which I have a problem with. That entitlement programs lack any basis of biblical authority, that we need a biblical authority for anything, and that radical environmentalism is a false religion. This is what they're being fed in the weekly Bible studies.
Wow.
And I'll let that lead us into the next topic, which has a deep core of this quell evil, punish the lawbreakers nonsense. Children are being separated at our border.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother show, though. Listen, I just stopped taking the aspirin to thin my blood for my leg clot, so please don't get my blood pressure too high tonight.
Okay.
Just saying.
Well, I'll give you the rant version then.
Okay. No, I'm good. You can, whatever you planned. I'm just, because now I want to know what you were really going to say.
Okay. So children are being separated. The Trump administration, on a mission to undo anything Obama ever did, said, or thought about, rolled out what they call a zero tolerance policy last month, which includes separating children. Now, interestingly enough, Obama had got his ass spanked a little bit when it came to his opinions on immigration too. And I don't just mean they're separating children, but I'm talking like put them in cages, separating children.
Right.
They've been telling families that the children are being taken away for baths and then they never see them again. Does that sound familiar? And I don't want to be one of these people that's like, oh, look, it's Nazi Germany again, but that sure sounds familiar.
Well, pause for a minute, because people have been saying this sounds like Nazi Germany
from the
beginning, because Trump just has that air about him.
Right. It's a dictatorial autocrat.
Every move
rhetoric
he makes on the board, it's reminiscent of those times in one way or another. So sickening, but I'm not surprised by it.
Sure. Then we learn that children are being stacked in shelters. In one example, an old abandoned Walmart with the windows covered up. There are reports that these children are only allowed outside for short periods of time. In other places, tent cities on military bases are being used. And they were denying our congressional representatives access into these facilities.
You know what pisses me off? They've got all the money to take these kids away and house these kids in tent cities and whatever. And we've thousands of people in Puerto Rico still without power, still without homes to live in, still dying because of the hurricanes last year.
Seen a Flint water test lately?
Right?
But wait, we need a Space Force.
Yes. Oh, the Space Force.
Fucking seriously, what the hell is wrong with this man?
Take your blood pressure medication, honey.
Sorry.
Guess I'm taking an aspirin tonight, guys.
Oh, the Space Force. My favorite Space Force meme is the one that's we want a Space Force, and then what we want is Star Trek.
Yep.
And what we're afraid of, or whatever, the Star Wars, and then what we're probably going to get is Spaceballs. That was pretty funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Former employees in some of these facilities have recorded audio and video, and then they just couldn't handle being a part of this anymore. So they quit. And then after they quit, they leaked these heartbreaking videos and images. Children who have no idea where their parents are, that haven't talked to their parents in over a week. And some of these children are in cages. Now, here's the thing. The Trump administration decided to call, let's go back through the thing a little bit here. Trump administration decides to call for a criminal prosecution of all adults who illegally cross into the U.S. And under existing immigration procedures, when a parent is referred for prosecution, the adult is sent to federal jail. But because we don't want to jail children, they're taken away and put in the care of an adult sponsor, or if no one is available, as would likely be the case when we're talking about mass incarcerating their parents, they're sent to a shelter. Okay, so on May 7th, Attorney General and House Elf Jeff Sessions announces this zero-tolerance policy for illegal entry into the U.S. On June 14th, while speaking in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Sessions defends this zero-tolerance policy, where he says this.
Illegal entry into the United States is a crime. It should be, it must be, if you're going to have a legal system and have any limits whatsoever. Persons who violate the law of our nation are subject to prosecution. If you violate the law, you subject yourself to prosecution. And I would cite you to the Apostle Paul.
And he looks off stage at somebody and gives a smarmy little grin. It's like, oh, I'm about to read from the Bible.
His voice gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
Alone. So I don't want to see the grin.
I don't disagree.
Ugh.
You to the Apostle Paul and his clear and wise command in Romans 13 to obey the laws of the government, because God has ordained the government for his purposes.
Now, why do we need to bring the Bible into this at all?
Shouldn't have to.
I just don't get it.
The previous administration wouldn't prosecute aliens who entered the country with children.
Now, what Obama wanted to do, we're going to talk about the previous administration. Obama's plan was process them and deport them as quickly as possible. That's what he tried to do. And he took tons of shit for it. He wanted, we don't want to incarcerate people for long periods of time and separate them from their children. We want to keep them together. And then if they don't belong here, then we deport them and go through the process. But let's speed the process up so that we're not sitting on it forever. And I don't know that I disagree with that. We're going to get into that more in a minute, though.
It was de facto open borders if you came with children. The results were unsurprising. More and more illegal aliens started showing up at the border with children. If you cross the southwest border unlawfully, then the Department of Homeland Security will arrest you. They catch you, and the department will prosecute you. That is what the law calls for. That is what we're going to do.
I'm not sure that that's actually true, is it? That the illegal entry kept going up. It seems to me that it kind of peaked in like 2010, if I remember right, and then it had been going down since then. So I'm not sure. That that's even true.
I don't know that I would trust anything he says, but definitely fact check that.
Right? Yeah, sure. Ah, man.
Having children does not give you immunity from arrest and prosecution. However, we're not sending children to jail.
No, you're sending them to internment camps.
Worse
You're
than
putting
jail.
them in cages.
Like, at least people in jail are getting whole hot meals and baths, actual baths, not just being told they're going to get a bath and then given a tinfoil blanket, you freaking assholes.
Law requires that children who cannot be with their parents be placed in custody of the Department of Health and Human Services within 72 hours.
He does seem like he's got a bit of a coke habit, doesn't he?
He does. Trump is the same way. I noticed a lot of these guys are always, and I don't know if it's just because they're like really super old and the formaldehyde treatments are messing with their respiratory. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of sniffling going on in that cabinet.
If it doesn't exist already, there ought to be a video of composite of all the sniffs throughout all the speeches.
I know there was one of Trump during the debates with Hillary. Somebody did one where he was just like,
yeah.
I don't remember who did it, but it was amazing.
Okay, so the NPR reported that over 2,342 children had been separated since early May, according to the DHS. The Trump administration continues to blame Democrats for our overwhelming illegal immigration problems. They state that there's nothing they can do about it because they're just simply enforcing the law. However, the law about separating families doesn't really exist. And all of which is just a load of shit anyway, because then on June 20th, Trump does the thing he said he couldn't do and signed an executive order that says the government will detain migrant families together throughout criminal proceedings for improper entry or any removal or immigration proceedings.
And he's such a jackass about it. He's like, it's the law, so I'm going to do the law. And so change the law. But then he gets this big paper and he's like, pompous and look what I'm going to do. Every single time he's ever signed one of these things. Have you noticed? So he's the same
it's
stupid,
a show. Sure.
Crappy, smarmy, gross,
he is still the reality TV show wannabe that he did on The Apprentice.
It's disgusting.
All about ratings. It's all about optics. It's all about the show.
Fooled me. Doesn't he have like all-time lowest ratings?
Yes, he does. Several administration officials have admitted that their family separation policy was intended to be a deterrent, arguing that we do the same thing if an American parent is jailed. We take their kids and we put them in foster care. How is this any different? You commit a crime right now, they come and take our kids away.
Foster care is, and I know this because I have friends who are foster parents who've gone through the foster care system. It's a system that's set up to take care of the children and their needs, and they usually have clean clothes and cozy beds or a family to come and take them and take care of them until their parents can have them back or whatever happens with them. They're not put in a cage in the side of an abandoned Walmart and given a freaking tinfoil blanket and a block of astronaut cheese. I'm sorry. I'm really, really upset about this whole thing.
You are much more animated about this than I would have, I guess.
It just pisses me off. I just think about my own kids. I don't know. Maybe it's the mom.
Yeah.
Like the mama bear going, this is fucking bullshit. You don't do this to children. Because I'll tell you what, you try to take my kids, I'll be dead. They'd have to kill me.
Okay, let's get through this. Almost done. Now, there's a lot of more background and legal cases that lead into this stuff, but I think this is like we need to stop the train here. But maybe we should talk more in generalities, and like I think we can probably all come to the table and agree that laws are necessary, and we can probably all agree that if we have laws, they should be enforced, particularly if they're good laws, right? We don't want to run around with bad laws on the books, but we do sometimes. So we can disagree what those laws might say or what the consequences might be. But this is something that I'd never really considered my own opinion on until very recently. What should our immigration policies be? What should our processes look like? Because I think, like, these people that are all, well, if they want to be here, then they'll go through the process. Where are they going to live for the next year or so while they're waiting on their paperwork to go through?
You're pretty optimistic on how quickly they get through.
That's true. That's true. I don't know. What do we do?
I feel like there needs to be some option, but I don't know, maybe look at how other countries do it, because we're not the only country that take in immigrants.
It's true. And if you look at Europe right now, they're trying to figure all this shit out too.
Like, I mean, there's got to be a decent way to do it where we're not ripping families apart and ruining lives, that they're just trying to get to a better place.
Right.
And America was founded on people trying to escape their oppressors and find a better place. So if you want to be a patriot and be all America, maybe you need to go back to those history books and learn a little bit about how America actually started. And then if that's not ideal for you, then you're not a patriot, you're a hypocrite. First, you know, I don't know.
What happened to their tired, huddled masses?
Right?
It wasn't there a story just in the last week that Trudeau said that Canada would take the refugees that we were?
Yes,
he did.
Yeah.
There, and this is where, like, I think the template of humanism applies really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, I get why you don't just want to open the doors and let people flood in.
Sure.
Right? There needs to be some sort of process.
Right.
But we can be humane about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the meantime, like, ugh.
I mean, I just think, for me, it all goes back to the money. Like, Trump has got this Space Force and he's trying to reinvigorate the coal industry. And I'm like thinking, you know what? The coal industry is dead. Arnold Schwarzenegger put out a great video I saw on Facebook this week. And basically he was like calling Trump out for wanting to fix the coal industry. He says, what you're doing is like trying to bring Blockbuster back and tell people that, nope, you can't have Netflix anymore.
That's true. Wow, I like that.
It was a brilliant video. I'll see if I can find it. We can put it in the show notes. But I just think about that. Like, it's all about this money. But if people that are getting this money from the coal industry have such a hard-on for the coal industry, that is, there's got to be another way to make money. And there are plenty of other ways. Other countries are burning their garbage to create energy. They're begging other countries for their garbage because they've run out of garbage. Like, there's energy efficient, green ways to do things that can definitely be good for business,
What do you
for
think
the
about
economy.
What do you think about taxing the rich?
Yeah, well, that's just, no, God forbid.
Bernie hand in the
I'm
air.
sorry, I don't know what I was thinking.
I mean, you know,
that's
but
one Bernie Sanders for you.
but like, they don't want to do that. But there's so many other, there's a million things you could do.
Sure.
And you'd have all this excess money that you could actually put into programs to help immigrants, actually put into programs to rehabilitate criminals and get them back to being productive members of society.
Yeah.
Empty the jails out, and empty the jails out of all the people that are in there for drug charges, and then use those jails as housing facilities for immigrants. That would even be better.
Now that you've brought up drugs again, I have to say Canada is also is moving toward making marijuana legal, right?
Yes.
Recreational marijuana legal.
Yes.
So
Here we are behind the times again. I have to. I try to remind myself that, like, in the grand scheme of nations, we're like the teenager.
Yeah,
we're struggling along behind everybody else sometimes. Going,
are we
what
really?
the hell are we doing?
Because this feels like a midlife crisis to me, not puberty.
Okay, maybe you have the Canada growing old and gray.
I think puberty
was
was when we had the fights for the rights of slaves and stuff. I think that was our puberty.
Civil rights, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is just the midlife crisis right here.
Eventually, we're going to run out of things to liken to the... Anyway.
I don't... for the life process.
You know what? Yeah. Listen, the closer we can get to retirement, the better at this point, the way things are going.
Okay, let's move on. We can talk about that all night. I have 3 more things, and then we'll call it a night. And I'm going to go out of the order that I originally planned to go in.
I'm sorry. Turn Texas into a temporary home for the huddled mass.
Yeah. I like Morgan says it won't be long before France asks for their statue back.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That would just be interesting to watch, actually. The mechanics of dismantling. Anyway. Okay, so I'm going to jump to some LGBTQ news real quick, and then we're going to come back to church-state issues, and we're going to tie this all back together with local issues in Central Florida free thought community. Right. So Charlotte Clymer, I don't know if you saw this story or not. Charlotte is a trans woman who was at a restaurant in Washington with a group of friends. When she and a friend got up to use the restroom, an attendant stopped her and asked for ID.
I did see this.
When she asked why that was necessary, the attendant said that you have to have female on your ID in order to use the women's room. Clymer replied, "That's nonsense," and continued into the bathroom and into a stall anyway. He followed her in.
Wait, did he check his own ID before he went
clearly
into the
not. Clearly not. Now, this is a dance club, I guess, and it was packed with people. So, like, imagine the bathroom hallway, right? And just lines of people.
Dance club bathroom hallways are nasty.
So, eventually, the attendant left, and when Clymer exited the restroom, the attendant and a manager were waiting for her. They repeated their claim that D.C. law requires that you have female on your ID, but could not cite the actual law. Instead, he told her, quote, "You being in there will make women uncomfortable," end quote.
What about when you were in there, jackass?
Right? And again, they're having this interaction in a busy hallway where the bathrooms are, people are lined up. You get the scene. She said she was angry and needed to cool off, so she went outside the restaurant. And at this point in the situation, this is when this woman becomes my fucking hero, okay? She pulls her phone out and loads up the actual D.C. law.
Oh, nice.
Heads back inside, straight to this manager to show him that he's wrong and checking IDs for gender markers is illegal. Of course, he refused to listen. Glancing over the text briefly, he says that's incorrect and threatened to call the police. She told him he should absolutely call the police, and that's the point when he asked her to leave. So she then explained to him that she works for the Human Rights Campaign.
Oh.
Wrong person to pick on. She knows a little something about this sort of thing, and said that he laughed and mocked her workplace. He keeps asking her to leave, but refusing to call the cops like he originally threatened, until finally a bouncer grabbed her by the arm and pushed her outside. Now, this was a bachelorette party, so the whole group ends up outside and to show her support,
Right,
whatever,
sure.
make sure she's okay. But it effectively ruined the night. So instead, she calls the cops.
Nice.
Cops show up. They completely respect her identity the entire time. They call for their LGBTQ liaison unit to
Nice.
respond, which is apparently a thing.
Why don't
they
we
have an
that-
LGBTQ liaison unit? That's great.
We need one of those if we don't have one already.
I don't think we do.
Don't think we do.
County. They confirmed that she was correct in her understanding of the law, so now she's seeking legal action.
Yeah, go
You
get it,
go.
girl.
Excellent.
Yes.
Get it.
So we'll follow that. That's great.
Get her on the show. I would love to have a firsthand
right
recount of that.
Yeah. Let's do. It's almost July. Let's do a little Christmas in July, huh?
Okay.
So one of our favorite segments on the show is the War on Christmas. and I'm gonna bring you a War on Christmas story.
In a world on the brink of chaos,
Why were the shepherds in their fields in winter?
as faith wavers,
I'm just not sure we should do the whole church thing this year.
one man will make a journey unlike anything you've seen before.
Where's your tree?
Dude, I'm Jewish.
This holiday season, a savior will rise up,
Oh, honey, Santa can't afford the new Xbox.
and a religion will fall.
From the great garbage state of Texas. In December 2015, in celebration of the winter solstice, go listen to our Christmas episode, by the way. It's one of my favorites. I spent a lot of time on that. In celebration of the winter solstice and Bill of Rights Day, and in response to a nativity display on public grounds, the Freedom from Religion Foundation was permitted and placed a display at the Texas Capitol, which also had the required sponsorship from a Texas legislator. Governor Greg Abbott, who is then the chair of the Texas State Preservation Board, ordered the display removed 3 days after it went up. And not only that, he attacked the display, arguing that the display was, quote, indecent, and compared it to a crucifix immersed in a jar of urine. Now remember, kids, this would-be theocrat has successfully climbed the governmental ladder to the position of governor of the great state of Texas. Wow. This is the guy that Texans voted for. Ugh.
Okay. I can't get past the crucifix submerged in urine. It's a letter, people. It's a letter T. That's all it is.
You know that was an actual piece of art, right?
Really? Yeah. No.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
No, I didn't know that. I'm not up on
I say piece of art. I mean, people can debate whatever. But,
sure.
But,
somebody called it art.
Yeah, somebody called it art. But I mean, that was a controversy. It was like 30 years ago. Or something
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah,
that sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So the display itself was a whimsical depiction of the Founding Fathers and the Statue of Liberty, celebrating the birth of the Bill of Rights, which I think was great.
Yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. So the good news is, last week, U.S. District Judge Sam Sparks declared that Abbott had violated FFRF's free speech rights by demanding that this thing be taken down. So let's, while we're on the topic of holiday displays, let's talk about this Winter Garden. What did you say it was? The Winter Garden lights? What was it?
Light Up Winter
Light
Garden.
Up Winter Garden.
Yeah, as part of the counter petition that's being offered in response to mine.
Which has nothing to do with
what
your petition was.
No.
Yeah. But no, the issue there is that they have gotten a couple of letters from FFRF in the past few years because the event itself is organized by the West Orange Ministerial Association in conjunction with the City of Winter Garden. So, like, materials that come out of the materials that are produced to advertise this have both names on it. Okay, and in addition to that, they sing hymns, they read passages from the Nativity story, of course, and at the end, the commissioners and the mayor come up onto stage, they throw the switch to light up Winter Garden, and they sing another hymn after the end of that. So, you know, the presentation is such that it appears that the City of Winter Garden is advocating for Christianity.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of the issue with that, and I'm not sure why this counter petition is
even
that's
brings
part
that
of the
into it, right?
Yeah, because it's not what I'm asking for right now.
But that's definitely something that we see every year, which is why we have a segment called "The War on Christmas." Right? You have these people that are these evil atheists are trying to take away Christmas, and you can't say Merry Christmas again. I'm gonna add to that clip of Donald Trump saying, "We're going to say Merry Christmas again."
Yes.
Yeah.
I like it. I just don't even know where that came from. Like, I don't know many atheists that are going to attack you if you say Merry Christmas to them. I mean,
right.
So stupid.
That was all about, I think, the directive from business owners saying, you know, if you're working in your store, right? You're Macy's, right?
Oh, well,
when people come up to the register, you can't say Merry Christmas to them as they walk out the door.
But that's
because they might not be.
That's the commercialized thing, though.
Right.
That every business that has any product to sell that they're going to, like, attach to that Christmas label is going to have some, oh, well, we have to cater to everybody because I want to sell all the things.
But that's the thing. I don't think I don't know why we're talking about this on June 30th, but I don't think there are widespread cases of businesses saying,
I really don't think
you can't say that.
No.
I don't think that's widespread.
And I guess I have it growing up not celebrating Christmas and having that, like, being in the working field. I mean, I worked for Macy's for years, and back in the day when I didn't celebrate Christmas and it didn't matter. Like, they didn't tell me, oh, Becca, you have to say Merry Christmas to everybody. As long as I showed up and did my job, nobody cared. You know,
right.
And people would come up to me and I would ring them up and they'd tell me Merry Christmas. And I go, oh, thank you so much. You have a great day.
Right.
And that was the end of it. Nobody ever came at me and go,
didn't make it into
why
a big
can't
deal?
you say Merry Christmas to Nobody ever asked me why I couldn't say Merry Christmas to them. And, I had, working for Disney in the gift shops, there was a couple of ladies there that were witnesses, and they felt very uncomfortable being in the greeter position during the holidays, because they felt like it was an expectation that they tell people Merry Christmas. And once they were sat down and said, no, you can say whatever you'd like.
Right.
As long as you're greeting people, it doesn't matter what you say to them. Then they were okay. So I don't know where this comes from.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The last story that I have for tonight is another church state story. And we've been covering sort of this new movement. And we talked in detail with Tom from the original Motto Project. Project Blitz, right? So we've seen here in Florida and elsewhere across the country this movement to slap "In God We Trust" plaques on all over schools and stuff, right? Well, Virginia just tightened down the screws a bit.
Ooh.
Last week, the Lee County, Virginia School Board voted unanimously, I might add, in favor of putting "In God We Trust" American flag decals on their school buses.
Yep, not just in the classrooms.
Now it's on the bus.
On the buses.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on record and say that if Polk County decides to do that, my child will not be on the school bus.
Right?
He already doesn't ride the school bus more than like 2 schools. But still, seriously?
Why not have one of those Jesus is my co-pilot bumper stickers? Why don't we just do that?
I mean, I wouldn't. Oh God, this is so stupid.
But this is part of that movement in Project Blitz to just dig in these little wins, the stuff that nobody's going to pay attention to, right? And you get that stuff stuck in there, and then you build on it.
Yeah.
Right. This is one of those things. Andrew Seidel from the FFRF. He has a video online somewhere. Called Sweat the Small Stuff, a speech that he gave. And this is exactly his point. And the whole speech was that we have to fight these small incursions because they lead to larger incursions. Small violations give license to larger violations.
Yeah.
And so,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you allow the little stuff, then it's real easy for them to take that and run. Give them an inch, they take a mile, right? And this is why you can't just pay attention to state or national elections. Get to know people who are running for school board, and we're going to have some of the Polk County school board people who are running for school board. We're going to have some of them on. School board, city council. Get to know these people. That shit is important.
Yeah.
And some of these quotes from board members were like, well, it's our national motto, and, they just passed a state law requiring we put it on the school, so why not the buses?
Right, exactly. Building on the small violations.
So dumb.
And again, this is what's really annoying. The people in this movement will argue that God in the motto doesn't mean the Christian God per se, right? They'll tell you, well, it has, you can use that to mean any God you want or whatever, but it's obvious that phrase has deep Christian meaning to the Christians. The people who are pushing for "In God We Trust," they mean the Christian God when they say that.
Right, absolutely. I'm going to point you to Wentzville. Oh gosh, which state was it now? I don't know. If you look up Wentzville, Wentzville,
okay.
And especially with invocations, this was where Sally Hunt, she got kicked out of that city commission meeting the mayor made up something to kick her out, but she's actually bringing a lawsuit against them for this. But they have an ongoing thing because they have "In God We Trust" across the dais in front of the thing. And just this past week, they actually got a guy to do a secular invocation, the first one ever in Wentzville. Was really good. And then he got up later during public comments and spoke against the "In God We Trust" thing. And I kind of forgot now where I was going with that. But, "In God We Trust," the whole thing between ceremonial deism and Christian. Oh, I was going to say that Wentzville, if you dig into that a little bit and look at some of the video from previous meetings and stuff like that, the people who are arguing back and forth for the "In God We Trust" thing. The ones that are arguing for it are very clearly motivated by their Christian beliefs, and that's why they want to keep the motto. So it's very divisive, and it's been difficult to deal with in the courts because the courts have declared it to be ceremonial deism and without meaning because of the rote repetition of the phrase. You know, it's not always clear where to go with that. Of course, with the original motto project, you know, we think that the motto should be "E pluribus unum." It's a much more appropriate, much more inclusive motto. But yeah, it's a tough one to deal with.
All right, well, let's wrap it on that.
You have very
We have
disappointed
gone.
people
I know.
in the chat.
I know. Everybody wants to do the Florida Man segment
So-
tonight, and we're just not. I don't have it.
Well, listen,
We're
you
not gonna
got it
do
right
it.
here.
I am the Florida Man.
Well, they haven't had a Florida Man segment in 3 weeks.
I know.
So you're going to have to do 3 segments
Lord.
of Florida Man next week to make up.
just-
we
just
should
put-
have the
just put it on
Florida
my
Man.
shoulders,
We
'cause
should
I-
have the Florida Man tournament next week. I'll do some research.
Tournament.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
I actually had articles written about me that began a Florida man was
There you go.
Yeah, okay. All right.
There you go.
So here you go. Live and in person, Dan, Russell. Ah.
Joseph wins. No suspenseful music needed. Okay, so if let's see, what is the Central Florida Free Thought Community's website?
It is cflfreethought.org, and you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter using CFL Free Thought.
Is there anything else you want to plug? Point people to?
You can reach me through the Central Florida Free Thought if you want to.
Cool.
I encourage people to sign the petition, please. tinyurl.com/WG petition. You can do it online, or you can come down to the Farmers Market in Winter Garden on Saturdays, not for the next 2 Saturdays, but after that, and sign it in person if you like.
Cool. And pay attention to your local elections. Get to know the people who are running. Elections have consequences.
Yes.
Nothing shows us that more than what we're going through with the Supreme Court right now.
No kidding.
So thank you for driving all the way down here to be in the studio, and we ran an hour over our time, so I appreciate you hanging with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Anytime. All right, let's wrap. Oh man. I
You're
knocked
also
over my
getting
drink.
made fun of in chat because Joseph's glass has been empty for half an hour.
I know. I saw that.
You're the worst hostess.
Well, that's why we're gonna end it now. Okay, so thank you to our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/SarahTalk. As always, we love you so much for supporting us financially and what we do. Next week, I think OG co-host Mandy Imus is going to drop in, so
Very
that'll
cool.
be fun.
That'll be fun.
And we'll see you next week. You've been listening to Sarah Talk.
Sarah Talk is made possible by listener support. Visit patreon.com/Sarah Talk to become a patron and help keep this program going. Contact Sarah and Company by email at producer@sarahtalk.com or call 224-40-SARAH. That's 224-407-2724. And follow us on social media, facebook.com/Sarah Talk Radio and on Twitter @Sarah Talk Radio. Sarah Talk is a production of Sarah Austin Media.